What do you see? Half full. Right. That's the right answer. All right. A.G. Kawamura, he says he has a plan for moderating this next session. He says most people right now are seeing where we are as half empty. He's like, no, it's half full. That is how he's going to moderate this panel. AG, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing? We're almost there, and it's important because the youth brigade, for the most part, I'm looking at myself because I am officially now a year older than the average American farmer. Don't sigh. They might change that someday. But today we have really a very dynamic panel here, and I'd like to quickly introduce them because we're going to talk about that next generation that has to pick up the mantle and feed a planet. I'd like to introduce that from my far left, Kasey Bryant Bamberger. She is a third-generation family business owner at Bryant Agricultural Enterprise, and her family has been for generations now producing diversified crops, wheat, corn, and soy. And we'll have a chance to look at the youth in action here, how that future looks here in the United States. Next to her is Ala Murabit. Dr. Murabit is a UN high-level commissioner for health, empowerment, employment, and economic growth. She's one of 17 sustainability development goal global advocates appointed by the UN Secretary General. And she has a tremendous amount of great information to share with us. And please do, all of our panelists, make sure and get on and look at their bios because they're enormously dynamic. To her right is William Warschauer. And Will is the president and CEO of TechnoServe, a nonprofit that works with enterprising people in the developing world to build competitive farms. And that's a really important term because that's what we want to see. New farms, new farmers, new ways to look at the food system that will feed this planet. And lastly, for many of you, and we all know, former Deputy Secretary Krysta Harden, she's here today, and she's working at DuPont currently as the current Vice President of Public Policy and the Chief Sustainability Officer, and a lifetime of devotion and hard work for agriculture, in agriculture, and with agriculture. And please do let me welcome all of them here today. Now, in setting the table for today's talk, it's just to very quickly describe what we've heard many times during the session, that there's a youth bulge in much of the world where there's a tremendous growth of young people coming into their years of maturity and their adolescence. And the question is, are they an asset or a liability? And of course, in a world that's exciting, in a robust world that's got a tremendous future, they have to be an asset. They must be an asset. And yet there's a myth that the way that we look at agriculture in some countries, especially developed countries, where it's a very small percentage of the population that's engaged in the actual agricultural endeavor, that maybe there's not that many people interested. And in other countries where poverty is so extreme, the thought of agriculture and poverty is somewhat linked in the minds of some of the populations there, and we have to recognize that, is that a myth or is that a story that can be changed and changed quickly within a generation? And then lastly, I think our goal at this panel is to really focus on something that's even more important. We believe in agriculture. We know that the future of the world depends on successful agriculture, and our goal then, all of us, is how do we change the picture and dial in a new way of thinking that agriculture is a career of first choice? And the minute we can do that, I think we know that we've got a great future ahead of us. And so with that, I'd like to ask Kasey. Kasey, I think a lot of people would look and say, well, you don't look like the normal farmer in America, but I actually believe that you kind of are. So can you talk about your path to choosing your career in agriculture and how you think it's different than the work from a generation ago.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody. It's very humbling being here today. To be in a room full of people that have so much vested interest in what myself and my family does. So thank you for your support. As far as my path in agriculture, I grew up in a farming family from Southwest Ohio. We grow corn, soy, and wheat. And so I actually grew up in the home that my great-grandparents originally purchased at a sheriff's auction during the Great Depression. So the home and the surrounding 200 acres is kind of how our family farm started. So growing up, I always had an interest in agriculture, an interest in farming. As a young girl, we didn't really know what that role would be. It wasn't as common in the United States for females in production agriculture. But it was always my passion, and I think myself and the rest of my family always saw me coming back to the family operation. After high school, we decided that it was, with the way that our operation had grown, that it was best for me to go on and pursue a business degree. So I attended Wright State University, graduated in 2013 with a business management degree, and then returned home to the farm. In 1988, my father, my uncle, and my grandfather set up Bryant Ag Enterprise, which was a partnership between the three of them. And today I'm a third-generation partner alongside my father, my uncle, and then my cousin. My grandfather is no longer involved, but he's very active on the farm today. As far as my role, I oversee all of our finances, all of our information technology. I handle all of our land partner relations. I manage all of our input purchasing, grain marketing, and then a large part of what I do is I manage all of our data. As far as how agriculture has changed or the normal farmer, what the consumer may think of, it's so different today. We have to do a better job at educating our youth that the farm that they read about in the books are no longer really what it's all about. We are so technology-based. I have a hard time explaining to close friends and relatives that, before the Tesla, there was a tractor that drove itself, and it's just so mind-boggling that this technology has been available in agriculture, and how do we tap into that with our youth? I became part of the Farm Journal Foundation, Farmers Feeding the World, and I just felt like it was really my role and my family's role to start to tap in and share our knowledge, not only domestically, but worldwide. And if I can't go out and individually feed every single person throughout the world, how could I help share that knowledge and share what we do? We started off as a 200-acre farm, and now we farm 15,000 acres, and then we custom spray and spread fertilizer for an additional 10. And we're no longer just a farm where, we really operate like a corporate business today, but that started somewhere, and it's all going back to the agronomics, the research and the development that goes into each individual seed variety that we plant, and just sharing that information, that wealth of knowledge that we've gained from the market of people that we surround ourselves with, I think is very important to attract the youth back to the family farm.
Thank you so much. Now, Dr. Murbit, through your role as a Sustainable Development Global Advocate, you're having a chance to see youth in so many different countries and so many different places. Would you describe to the audience your observations about how they look forward to the future? What's their thought of good employment and how agriculture may or may not be a part of that?
Thank you. I'm always so glad to be in a room where when I say I'm from Saskatchewan, most people actually know where it is. And where I, as the youth, am seen as the glass half full in future. This is very good. Good for the ego. But, I think I look at food security based on my other work from multiple perspectives. I look at it from an aspect of economic growth. I look at it very much as a security issue. As well as a health issue. Those are where I prioritize, and that shapes my view of it. And so the first thing I'll mention is we often hear about this youth bulge. We hear about it everywhere. You hear about it when you're talking about security in terms of actual border and territorial security. You hear about it for food security. You hear about it during education. Literally any topic right now, if it relates to the developing world, the terms youth bulge are said. And an excess of youth or a large number of youth is not the challenge. What we've noticed is the real challenge is relative deprivation. And that means that I am seeing other people get what I do not have the opportunity to have, despite working as hard, despite doing everything that I can simply because of where I live, what my skin color is, what my last name is, etc., right? So the challenge isn't necessarily the amount of people, it's the equality in the opportunities provided to them. So it's the first thing that we have to really kind of keep in perspective. The second, when we're talking about agriculture, in much of the world, including here in the United States, it is not perceived to be a very attractive career for young people. And that's not a fault of the career itself, rather it's the fault of what the opportunities that are present there are. So I am a first-generation Canadian. And as the child of immigrants, my entire life has been to ensure that I succeed to a degree where my parents' sacrifices were worth it. And this is something that I see replicated throughout so many young families coming to the United States and Canada. They say, listen, we left behind the farming life, and you can fill in the blank country. Here, my kids are going to be doctors and lawyers and engineers, right? And that's the same sentiment in the developing world. We need to have a cultural revolution about what farming is and what opportunities it provides. And that's not taking into account the fact that you need to have access to land and resources to even be able to embark on this career, and that the results are not immediate. There is no immediate gratification in farming. And in today's world, that relative deprivation means we want something immediate. We want to be able to provide for our families. The third area I'll get into is who we're talking about when we talk about youth. Youth oftentimes, at least in the global policy space, means young men. Women means older women. And young women just get dropped off a bridge somewhere. And this actually presents, in my opinion, as the single biggest problem when we're talking about food security. Because if we look at the developing world as an example, the people who get the most educational opportunities are young men. Those who leave rural communities to go into urban communities to help provide for their families are young men. Those who leave their home country to go to a developed country for economic opportunity are young men. The people who stay at home, the people hardest hit by poverty and climate change, and the people we need to work with the most are young women. Young women reinvest 90% of their money into their community. If you educate a young woman, you're talking about a growth in their country GDP by 2 to 3% for 2 years of education. A young woman who is educated and employed is less likely to have more children. A young woman who is educated and employed is more likely to vaccinate her children. Women are the most impacted by poverty, and they are the one piece of the puzzle that we tend to overlook. We don't see them as big of a security threat, so we don't factor them into all of our security challenges. And we tend to focus on young men. We're afraid those are the youth bulge that will pick up the guns, without recognizing our one biggest partner in this has to be young women. It has to be. And until we start factoring that into everything, and a great book I would recommend reading actually is Drawdown by Paul Hawken, because he's done a phenomenal job of isolating the fact that if we focus solely on girls' education and women's health, we could help further climate action by a significant degree, right? So that's the reality. If we're talking about small livelihood, we're talking about young women. The last thing I'll bring up in this, and this comes out very often when we're talking to young people around the world, particularly when it comes to land ownership and food security, is another reason it's not necessarily very attractive is because it is a very combative field. You have large multinational corporations coming in and taking land and ownership from local communities. It is not a field where they feel as though they are secure or they are competitive. And I'm glad that you're sitting next to me and going to go into that a little bit. I'm outsourcing. But it's exceptionally important that we realize the impact of our global economic systems on local farms and local ownership. It's unrealistic to tell young people in Libya or in South Africa or Nigeria or Colombia, you can make $2 an hour. That's what you can do because you need to focus on health security when in other parts of the world there's an excess to the point of severe obesity. We have to be more honest about what our priorities are. Our priorities are either food security for everybody, not just sitting in rooms to make ourselves feel better and say we've spoken about the global goals or we're talking about sustainability. But in that case, it means we have to measure our consumption. We have to measure where our resources are going. We have to start actually holding the mirror up to ourselves and saying our global economic systems have heavily impacted the way in which local farming is produced. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I think Dr. Merbit described pieces of a puzzle, and so much of what we discussed today was starting to see what that puzzle completed looks like, that there are a lot of pieces that we must put in place, we kind of know we need to put in place, and that's half the start. Krysta, I'd like to ask you, how do you think DuPont, and even in your previous role, how do we encourage, and what's the tenor of need for new people to come on into the workforce, new people to get engaged, and more importantly, excited about this agricultural endeavor we call sustainable society?
Well, I think that I'm very lucky that I've been able to continue kind of my focus, having left USDA and now at DuPont, really focusing on our young people and women in particular and coming into agriculture. I think that it's obvious the need is there. We need to attract more young people into agriculture. We need more veterans. We need more second careers. We need everybody who has that passion for feeding others and loves our natural resources and wants to be involved in agriculture. So I think it's very obvious. But I think some of our companies, including the one I work for, have been guilty of some mistakes. And one is, I learned this even before I came with the company, that when we go to career fairs and we're going to colleges and we're talking to young people, our first question is, did you grow up on a farm? Mm-hmm. And I did, so I would gladly have said yes, 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 and be very proud of that. That's usually how I introduce myself. But those resumes or applications go in one pile. The kids who did not grow up in agriculture go in another. That stack of kids are now, what they are saying is, we are not being heard, we're not being listened to near as much. And if we're only looking at kids who grew up in agriculture, we have a very short stack that's going to get shorter. And that we have got to encourage and welcome young people, or anyone, frankly, who wants to be involved in agriculture. I was at Penn State yesterday with 200 young women. About half of the room had grown up on farms, mainly dairy farms in Pennsylvania, as you might imagine. The other half did not, but they are excited and energetic and committed to agriculture. And so, would you hire me? Because even though I didn't grow up on a farm, I grew up in Philly or Pittsburgh in a city or a suburb, but I want to be a researcher, I want to be a loan officer, I want to be a communicator, I want to be an ag teacher. Why the agribusiness community embracing us as well? So I think we have some challenges. We've been pretty narrow in our focus, and maybe it's worked this far, but I think my company is thinking differently, and I think a lot of our competitors and sisters and brothers in agriculture are also going to need to do the same thing, to embrace others, having them want to learn and to know and to get involved in agriculture.
Thank you so much, because I'd be the first to say, as long as we mention youth, there's also this idea that a new farmer is not necessarily someone who's just younger. There's a tremendous amount of folks who are interested as a second career, if you will, or a new career. And when we make the comment that we want agriculture to be a career of first choice or second choice, or a place where they can transition into, it's all the above. It really has to be that way. We were talking about vets, how important vets have tremendous discipline, and there's a lot of great programs currently nationally bringing vets back into the workforce in agriculture, and we're excited about that as well. Will, your work is really exciting because you're actually not, we always talk about what's a think tank and what's a do tank. He's got a do company. And how do you think agriculture is a promising employment opportunity then in these other countries, and the large numbers of youth that you're encountering there? How are they embracing that future? And is it easy to find excited youth that want to get involved with your programs and the new farms that you're creating in all these different places?
Yeah, H.E., thank you. I think we certainly see the glass as half full in this respect, and our work is entirely overseas in developing countries with smallholder farmers, often on farms as small as just 1 or 2 acres. Allah spoke about the youth bulge, and so we've heard a number of statistics today. You can pick your statistic. Over half of the population of Africa is under the age of 19. with 11 million young people entering that workforce every year. It really boggles the mind. At the same time, the average farmer in Africa, depending on which country you look at and whose numbers you believe, is somewhere between 50 and 60 years old. So as that cohort begins to age out of farming, in order to continue to feed everyone, you're going to have to get people more interested in farming. And how do you go about doing that? Like probably many of you in the audience, I've been at a number of meetings recently where people have talked about how do you make farming sexy for young people. And often that conversation is about technology, about drones, about apps. I've got a 15-year-old daughter, and so certainly I'm aware that young people like apps and technology. I don't disagree. But our perspective is that the best way to make farming attractive to young people is to make it profitable.
Yep.
Dan Glickman was desperate to end one of the last panels by saying the farmer has to earn. And I think that when you can do that, that has the potential to change everything. We're engaged in a large activity right now. We're learning an enormous amount about this. We're working on a program in 4 countries in East Africa, training 60,000 rural young people, helping them to identify economic opportunities on and around the farm in their communities. And they get 3 months of intensive training, everything from how to develop a business and write a business plan, how to market products, how to keep records and do financial management, to self-efficacy as well. And then they're mentored and followed up for 6 months after they get that training. We've seen them gain, on average, across the 4 countries, 133% growth in their income, and we've seen 70% of participants regularly saving money compared to just 10 before they entered that program. I've had the great pleasure to go and spend time with them in a number of different countries, and they're doing a whole range of things. They are raising chickens and selling eggs. They are fish farming. They are making a new kind of poultry feed with cassava. They're doing all sorts of interesting things. But what I'm struck by is how consistently they tell me the same things. I never thought I would work in agriculture. I always was waiting for the time when I could leave and go to the city. And they now are able to, through their earnings, many of them are putting siblings or other relations through school. One has become a prominent member in a youth council. He was an outcast, an orphan in his village, and he's been invited onto this youth council by the leader there, in part because of his status. So you see a great change, and I think that the key again, is to give these young people the training and support so that they can engage and earn through farming.
Well, I love that. I just always have had a chance. I was not an FFA kid. Future Farmers of America, maybe there's a Future Farmers of Africa, a Future Farmers for all over the place, but giving folks an introduction to some of the aspects of agriculture is always going to be important. The myth that we were talking about, that we have increased mechanization, digitalization, we have automation, we have all these things coming forward. I'm a fruit and vegetable grower, so I take that with a little bit of grain of salt or grain of something, right? How does that impact the future for this workforce, and what do you think it means for how we prepare the young people for that future, knowing that there's a lot of new technologies coming forward? Are they going to replace the labor force? Are they going to augment the labor force? Any thoughts on that for our board here?
I think it will augment it. I think our young people are already so used to technology and innovation. They're not thinking about that their job is going to be replaced. They're entering the workforce with a whole different mindset. I think it may be a little scary for folks who are in the business now, wondering what it means for them. But when I talk to young people, they're very excited. They do want an app for everything. They do want technology. They see things mechanized, at least in our country, and I think it's probably in all developed and developing countries. So I think it's something they probably embrace maybe sooner than folks around my age.
Okay, Dr. Margaret?
I think we have to also get out of the lens of the immediate job of agriculture and recognize that farming means you are living in a more isolated community. You're not necessarily living in a big city. And so we have to make living in those communities attractive. We have to ensure that they have the same resources and opportunities and they have the same activities in those communities that they would in a large city. Because moving to the city is part about actually being independent and enjoying all these new experiences. And for many people, the idea, if they have the opportunity to work on a farm, it's often their family land. It's land they grew up on. It's the same experience. It's usually rural, so we have to make it attractive. We have to make living that lifestyle attractive. And in order to do that, you can give me a million apps. But if my friend is living in the city and making enough money to put food on her table and on her parents' table or on her kids' table, I'm going to be envious of her life. So give me money, make it profitable, make it lucrative, and I'll buy all the drones I want. But make it something that makes money.
Kasey?
And to piggyback a little bit off of Ala, I think that what I see a lot today is we have kids that are growing up on farms. Like she said, they want to get away from it. And we're really, with our operation, trying to tap into that generation that has never been involved in agriculture because they have no predetermined opinions. And the industry has changed so much because of the technology, and they pick up on it so quick that we can teach them the agronomic side. They're so innovative, and they bring new things to our operation and allows us to obtain sustainable growth. But not only do we need to teach this next working class on how to make money, but how to keep it too. Yeah. And I think that's a big part that we're not only missing in agriculture, but we're missing in the next generation of working class as a whole. Yeah. How do they start to learn long-term investments and how they make their money work for them so that it's not here and gone? Mm-hmm.
And I know we're down to the point, actually, this time does go very quickly where we'll need to ask some questions from the audience. But real quickly, I will say that agriculture is not only rural, but is absolutely urban these days. And the enormous amount of opportunity in a mega city or a small city of 1 million or a small city of 100,000, it's really off the chart just how much food production can come. It's not to say that you're going to feed the world from a rooftop, but the tremendous opportunities and the new technologies to grow indoors or to grow in odd places has never been more exciting because there's a pretty robust toolbox of ways to produce different kinds of food. But are there any burning questions out there? We'd like to certainly, here's one right here, and I'll take 2 right away, and then is there another one over here in the back there, please? So over here first.
G'day, my name's Sam and I love agriculture. During my time as an undergraduate, I've studied in the Philippines and Sri Lanka and Australia. I've been very lucky. But in all 3 of those countries, agriculture students get laughed at for being an agriculture student. Spoke a lot about destigmatizing farming as a career, but what about destigmatizing degrees in agriculture? How do you support the agricultural graduates that make farming more profitable?
Good question, thank you. And then the question over here, please.
Hello, Amy Braun from Kellogg Company. I just first wanted to thank you for bringing up the role of gender in this. Just seems like something that we could continue to focus on for this discussion. But the other thing that I had as a thought was to hear from you guys about the cost of entry for young people into this industry, especially if it's not a heritage industry for their family, as well as the role of shared lands and how ownership has a role going forward, both in the U.S. as well as abroad.
2 good questions, one on image, one on entry. Any quick comments? Kasey?
As far as entry, I think that we need to do a better job of creating opportunities. Although I came from a farming family, I do have 3 sisters that have no interest in agriculture. They have their own passions and are successful on their own, but at the same time, my parents want to be very fair to them, and so I'm not just given anything. We've had to look at a lot of succession planning, how I will start to buy out their shares and we'll equally share in the land. But one thing that a lender once told my father and I when we sat down to kind of pick his brain about a few things was, it's not always about the dollar figure, it's about the opportunity that you're giving people, and then the rest will kind of fall into place. So I think we need to do a better job giving people that are interested all across the world that opportunity in agriculture, whether it's lower interest rate loans, whether it's educating them on how to get started. All of those different resources play a huge part in that.
Bill, would you like to answer one of those?
Sure. I mean, I would speak to the question of land is a huge one. Very, very challenging. We've done some interesting work in Nicaragua with dairy farms and working to get parents to seed part of their farm or part of the profits from a farm to their children, a bit as you've been describing actually over the course of it. But there are many markets we work, Kenya being one of them, where farms keep being subdivided and becoming smaller and smaller to the point of really not being viable. So it's an enormous challenge in many places where we work. I also just want to support the question and Anala's point on gender. I think that we try to take great care to make these programs as available and as welcoming and as appropriate for young women as for young men. And indeed, they perform and outperform the young men. And a lot of them end up doing business in groups, and often those groups are mixed gender, which I think is nice as well.
So in 30 seconds or less, because we've really come to the end of our time, does agriculture have an image problem? And in 30 seconds, how do we fix that? Kasey, first.
Yes and no. I think that it does in a sense that a lot of our minds are set to think that, it's a older male's workforce. I think that three of us sitting up here, you can see that there's a lot of women that take passion and are involved in agriculture, whether it's from a production standpoint, a sales standpoint, an accounting standpoint. There's so many different options out there. We just have to keep chipping away at that and being advocates for it.
Thank you.
I do. I definitely think we need to change the way in which agriculture is looked at, and I think it actually reflects a lot on the opportunities provided. I think there needs to be more economic growth and economic potential in agriculture, but I think we need to start a lot younger than we are. We need to start in grade school talking to people about how things are grown and who grows them and how they can be part of that. We need to make it as attractive as being a doctor or a pilot or an astronaut. I don't know, I definitely wasn't 5 years old saying I'm going to be a farmer when I grow up. And I think that we need to make it an appealing job, and the only way to do that is to start very, very young.
Well.
Yeah, in emerging markets, it definitely has an image problem, particularly for children of smallholders. They associate agriculture with just getting by, and you do backbreaking work all day, and all you end up doing is being able to feed your family. And so again, if we can make it seen as a business, as a profitable business opportunity, that's the key.
In addition to everything everybody said, because I agree with them, I think the messenger is also very important. I remember being overseas in so many different places, people saying there's no women involved in agriculture in the U.S. Our spokespeople tend to be more men. We've had one female Secretary of Agriculture. We need more, Madam Secretary. Messenger matters, our advertising, our promotion, our leadership. White men, I'm sorry.
To sum it up, women are the solution. Start investing.
I have three sisters, and I can agree to that. I will say one challenge. When we create abundance in a planet, it becomes very easy to become complacent about where food comes from and forget. When we have scarcity, suddenly everybody pays more attention. In those countries where scarcity exists every day, that's where you would think the agricultural endeavor can become, they could be the heroes, the cavalry coming in and changing the picture if we could have all the information that came out at today's forum, if we can bring to play the rest of the pieces of the puzzle so we can complete these sustainable development goals. Ultimately, that's our goal. That's what, in our lifetimes, that's where we're headed. And thank you to everybody today for being with us. A hand for our great panel.